Today's guest on A Life and a Living podcast is Janine Garner, who is an author. She had a very successful corporate career before that, but is now a very successful author and speaker and consultant. She has just published her latest book called Be Brilliant, which I would highly recommend. It's a really good book. But she's also the best-selling author of It's Who You Know and From Me to We. And we focus very much on the book, her latest book, Be Brilliant, where we talk about, for everyone to help them to understand what being brilliant actually means. What does, to say be brilliant, what does that look like for you? What does that mean for you? Who will you become when you become brilliant? And what is your definition of brilliance? But also she talks about the 4 laws of to be you, to be ready, to be together, and to be heard. So in a very wide-ranging conversation, we really talk about how you can find your brilliance, how you can manifest your brilliance, and how you then can take the steps to really building a brilliant life for yourself. So Janine is a fantastic speaker. Her book is a really, really good book, but the interview really does give some great nuggets about how we can go deep within ourselves, find our brilliance, and then sustain ourselves on our journey to becoming brilliant. So I highly recommend it. If you want to go to my website, www.johnmurphyinternational.com, and click on podcasts, there you will find loads of interviews that were some other great guests that have just contributed so much to our podcast over the years, and you can subscribe to us on iTunes and Spotify and elsewhere. But in the meantime, sit back and enjoy this really, really excellent interview with the very, very articulate and energizing Janine Garner. Janine, you're very welcome here. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me. It's so wonderful to be here.
It's a real pleasure. You have been quite the prolific author. You've been the author of It's Who You Know, From Me to We, and the latest one is Be Brilliant, which I have here, which thank you for sending it to me, and I have read it, and I really, really enjoyed it. So I will come back to that. But in a previous life, you've had quite the commercial career before your current career, where you've done many award-winning campaigns, marketing campaigns for the likes of Ralph Lauren, Jaeger, Sainsbury's, and Citizen watches. So how did you migrate from that to what you're doing right now?
That's a really good question. And let me tell you, none of it was actually planned out. It all happened by accident. I often giggle when I think about the fact that I've written 3 books, best-selling books. I'm often asked to comment and write articles for publications. And when I actually finished, I stopped doing English at the age of 16 because I couldn't understand the difference between adjectives and verbs and nouns. And even now I get confused. So I just always have a little giggle to myself. But yeah, for about 20 years, I had a very, traditional corporate career. I worked my way up that corporate ladder, starting life as a graduate trainee, and ultimately was a group marketing director looking after those 2 incredible brands of Ralph Lauren and Orangutan. I started life in the UK and did that traditional route of leaving home at 18, going to university. I gradually moved further and further south from Leeds, the north of England, studied in Birmingham, and then moved to London. And when I look back during those early years of my corporate career, I sensed that I was very much continually striving, proving I was good enough. Hadn't really sort of nailed why, but I can still remember at the time constantly looking up and that wishing for more, and constantly doubting myself and thinking I had to do more. At the age of 29, I arrived in Australia. So I fell in love in London and came over to Australia on a holiday, landed back in London in the February, hit the M25 at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It was pitch black. And I went, I can't stay here anymore. And so I applied for a grant and ended up arriving in Australia in December 2000, literally with a backpack, a resume, a permanent residency visa, and my boyfriend at the time, and who has become my husband, but he was the boyfriend at the time. But I'd packed everything up. I literally arrived with nothing. And I think at the time I remember going, oh my gosh, I've got to rebuild this life based on this dream that I had of sunshine and surf and beach, and not really knowing what I was in for. I had to rebuild my career in a country where I had no social proof, and rebuild my network in a country where I actually knew nobody. And that really was my first insight into the power of connection. How actually when you build very deep connections, you can achieve remarkable things. These connections last over time. They unlock amazing ideas and collaborations, and ultimately they support you in your dreams. And so I then I arrived in Melbourne, couldn't find work in Melbourne, packed the backpack again, arrived in Sydney, lived on a friend's floor for 3 months, and started rebuilding my corporate career. And over that next 8 to 9 years, did that. I got married to my husband, and we had 3 children. And I got to the top of that corporate ladder, and I can remember this moment of just looking around and going, is this it? And thinking to myself, I'd lost the fire in my belly. There's something that had gone. I was great at what I did, but I just lost that fire. I remember feeling incredibly frustrated at the fact that my life seemed to revolve around giving to work, giving to staff, giving to Mr. Lauren, giving to the media, giving to the CEO, giving to shareholders, giving to kids, giving to my husband, giving to my animals at home, and just going, I've totally forgotten who I am, and I need to work my brain. And then I had this almost like a moment that I wish I could have bottled and go back to. I had the opportunity to meet an incredible woman, Abigail Disney. She is the grandniece of Walt Disney, and we were having a private lunch. I was sponsoring some event, and I had this opportunity to sit and have a private lunch and chat with her. And I was talking about her life and talking about why she did what she did and what her tipping points are. And I remember turning to her and going, but Abigail, how do you do it all? How do you do it all? And she turned to me and she said, Janine, you don't have to pack a backpack and climb Mount Everest. You simply have to choose to be a brick in the wall of change. And it was this moment where I went, yeah, and I just went, wow, what do I want to do? What is my brick in the wall of change? And so that happened. And then there was this next moment where I came home. It was probably a few months later, came home, sat down to have dinner. At the time, the children were 7, 5, and 3, I think. And to put it into context, I'd always worked full time. I was a bit of a workaholic. I'd been brought up with that very north of England mentality of you work hard, you'll get rewarded, just constantly. I'd be putting in so many hours, all whilst, pregnant, having young children, just working myself like crazy. And my 5-year-old asked me, my daughter, Taya, said to me, Mummy, why do you work so hard? And I said, well, I've worked hard to get the qualifications. I've worked hard to build my career. I've worked hard to make sure that, your dad and I are putting a roof over our heads and buying clothes and toys and taking you on holiday. And she turned to me, John, and she said, but Mummy, why are you so unhappy?
Out of the mouths of babes.
And it was literally these moments of seeing other incredible self-made entrepreneurs having a fire. So I was like, I've lost my fire. Then there was that moment with Abigail Disney, and then there was this Taya moment that I just went, I have to get back in control. I have to work out what it is that I want to do next. So I've done everything I wanted to do now, but what's next for me? And that really started this whole knock-on effect of, I left corporate, I left a 6-figure salary and a wonderful wardrobe and traveling the world to set up my own business. I started up bootstrapped a women's networking organization, which was all about bringing together women like me that had dreams and visions and wanted more. And that network grew across Australia. We were testing it in London and Singapore. I ended up selling that in March 2019. On the back of that work, I started getting asked to speak about my opinion. So I started this speaking career, and then somebody said to me, you need to write a book, and that's where From Me to We came. And it literally just one thing after the other grew. And now I spend my life pre-COVID, traveling the world, speaking and working with organizations to essentially embed powerful connection into their organizations to support the building of high-performing teams. So if I could have mapped it out at the age of 18, it would never have ended up here, but I love what I do. And now, John, I'm with this third book, Be Brilliant. I'm on a mission. I'm on a mission to unleash brilliance in 10 million people over the next 10 years, because I know the power of connection.
Absolutely. But there's a very, very competitive streak in you, because I know that you've done a couple of Tough Mudders, and I know that you've also done a Spartan race. So there's a steeliness in there that you can see coming through. But let's go back and talk about, because I really enjoyed your book. I really did enjoy it. There's so much good content in it. I love the way that you've actually written it. One thing I was trying to put it down is kind of say, okay, how do you define brilliance?
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because there's also so many people that say to me, why should I be brilliant? How can I be brilliant? Can it exist? And I think essentially for me, brilliance is within you. Brilliance is about being the very best that you can be. It's about a constant practice to improve who you are being, and who you want to become. And wrapped up in there is this growth piece into essentially getting out of your own way and being brave enough to go, this is me. And when we can get into that space, we enter this incredible place of flow versus striving and proving. And it really was through working with executives and business owners and corporate leaders where I was starting to see so much stress, so much fatigue, so much burnout, and so much questioning that I was asking myself, where has this brilliance gone? How can you build incredible teams and incredible organizations if you yourself feel like you're in survival mode versus shining brilliantly in everything that you do? And so I decided to start talking to incredible leaders, incredible champions of change, incredible owners of organizations, because I wanted to unlock what this difference was. What is the difference between people that achieve but get stuck? Like they're good at their job, like I was at the age of, I'm giving my age away now, but at the age of 39, I was great at what I did. I delivered fabulous campaigns. I built awesome and award-winning marketing campaigns for global organizations. I was good, but there was something missing. And what I realized, what I learned from talking to all these people was there was this continuing thread, and it was this thread of self-leadership. It was this thread of knowing yourself, your warts and all, of owning that spotlight, of managing your energy, of essentially investing in self-leadership to enable you to lead others. And that really is the essence of Be Brilliant. It's in you. And if you can lead yourself, if you can step into that spotlight of who you are being, and who you want to become, without operating from a place of self-doubt and imposter syndrome, keeping you small, without worrying what other people say, but actually with full intention, bringing the best of yourself to everything you do, and knowing that by doing that, the multiplier effect of brilliance happens, then that
do you find, Janine, that for when you're talking to people, is that many people actually struggle because, you say to, okay, for you to be brilliant, and there's an element of, well, who would I be and what would I be and how would I be if I were brilliant? Because I don't really know what that brilliant version of me looks like. Yeah. So how do you help people to find that and to know? Because unless they know what they're going for, I'm not saying that you've got to have kind of a roadmap of A to Z. But you've got to understand is that who will I be when I'm brilliant? And what will I be when I'm brilliant? And very often people struggle to actually really get that clear.
I think people already know who they'll be. They're just ignoring it. And I think it's because the enemy to your brilliance is always within. The enemy to your brilliance is within you in terms of the voices in your head that you listen to that are trying to keep you small. The voices in your head that are telling you that you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you're not rich enough, you're not savvy enough. All of those voices that we choose to listen to keep us small. Their enemy is within you because of the lack of ownership around boundaries, that we give up our own boundaries around our time, around where we're investing that time, around what we say yes to, around what we say no to, and also around who we let into our world. And the reality is we feel it. I call it in the book the itchy jacket. You can feel it. It's that feeling of, I'm not in the right place right now. And we are voicing it in terms of frustration. We're voicing it in terms of, I'm not sure what's next. We're voicing it in terms of anxiety or how relevant am I going to be into the future. And it's this tension that we've got to break through. So we know it, but we're choosing to ignore that feeling. And instead, what we're doing is we're acquiring stuff, and yet we're still unhappy. We're acquiring contacts, and yet we're still feeling lonely, unsupported, and disconnected. And because of the wonderful world that exists on the internet, we're acquiring knowledge. We're going for this course and that course, the 7 easy steps to becoming a millionaire, write a book in 48 hours, how to lead successfully. And yet we're still struggling with self-doubt, with a lack of self-belief. And so these three things are just compounding to essentially keep us stuck. And my view is, I think it's a waste. I see so many incredible, awesome, brilliant people in organizations, and I just have to get them unstuck. And when you fuel and feed that belief again, when you build that back up, when you start talking to what is it that you want to do? What is it that you want to become? It's all there. It's just that we, for some reason, have had that ability to speak it beaten out of us, often beaten out of us in the schoolyard.
Well, yeah, it's also conditioning, isn't it? I mean, it's kind of, also you find in organizations, and you've been through the corporate world, is kind of doing what you should be doing, doing the right thing, which is not necessarily the right thing for you. But you quote in the book, you quote that great Edmund Hillary quote saying that, it's not the mountain you conquer, it's you. And that's so very true, because we do get in our own way. And also we do listen. I love please tell the story about the Mildred the orangutan. I love that, because it just resonated so much with me, and I know it would. So please tell that story.
Yeah, so I have a podcast myself called Unleashing Brilliance, and I had this wonderful guest on the podcast, a lady called Sherilyn Shackle. Sherilyn is the founder and CEO of a company called the Marketing Academy, which is now a global organization, and her mission is to actually raise the profile of marketeers in organizations, and she's built a brilliant business. Anyway, we were chatting, and I said to her, so Sherilyn, what scares you? What are you scared of? You're running this awesome organization. You've built up this vision and this dream. You've got people around the world running through your programs. What scares you? And with the most serious face on her, because I was interviewing her face to face, and she just went, Mildred. Mildred scares me. And I went, who the is Mildred? And she went, Mildred, she said, those voices in your head, Janine, the voices that are trying to keep you small, the voices that are telling you you're not good enough, I've named mine. And she goes, my voice is Mildred, and she is an orangutan. And I'm like crying with laughter. I was like, tell her, she said, like recently, she's going, and I literally had to get up and give a speech, and I'm walking into the room, and Mildred appears. And Mildred goes, Sherilyn, stop. So she's going, what? You're going to look stupid. You don't know what you're going to say. And in my head, I'm visualizing this orangutan walking alongside her, telling her she's not going to be good enough. And Sherilyn's point was that we've all got these voices in our head, and she's so right. We've all got voices that we choose to listen to. And there's a wonderful, as funny as it is, the psychology behind being able to name that voice, being able to distance yourself from the voice in your head gives you that reality check. And so hers is Mildred. I've named mine. I've got a little green frog that's called Fred, and I literally go, Fred, back off, I'm all right, don't worry about it.
But
and
I love the way she handled it, because I mean, and I love the way she spoke about it. She said, "You're only a bloody orangutan. You're
a bloody orangutan.
Piss off," you know. It's, yeah. And I just loved the way she used that. But I just thought it was, you know, it resonated so much because we all have a Mildred. We all have a Mildred, right? Going back to the book, you say there are 4 laws where you talk about be you, be ready, be together, and be heard. Do you maybe want to run through that?
Yeah, absolutely. And these 4 laws are on the back of all that research, all those interviews I did. And what I did is try to codify the learnings. And that's what's become this framework that is essentially in the book, Be Brilliant. So law number 1 is all about owning your spotlight. Essentially, this is about gaining clarity on who you are being, and who you want to become. And it's about fueling up the self-belief and knocking into touch that self-doubt that keeps you small, that stops you from pursuing that dream, for asking for that pay rise, for going for that new job, from packing it all in and doing something else. You know, it's essentially about, okay, let's get back in control and own your spotlight. Law number 2 then is about energy leadership. It's about harnessing your energy. I read recently, I was just saying, on the back of COVID, the average claim for anything related to psychological safety is around 200,000 Aussie dollars. I don't know what that is in UK or euros. But essentially 50% of that is on the back of fatigue, burnout, stress, anxiety. So it's costing us a fortune. Our lack of looking after ourselves is costing organizations a fortune. So law number 2 is all about ensuring that you are functioning at your best for as much time as you possibly can. Because too many people are walking robots of themselves. You know, one of the quotes in the book is, we are at risk of becoming the robots of life versus the humans of extraordinary potential. And if you look at us, we're at risk of being robots because we're just functioning, but we're not actually living and creating. So this one is about turning that feeling of being time poor and in survival mode into a feeling of being time rich, and actually, can you imagine that, time rich and actually thriving? That's law number 2. Law number 3 is when we then start turning our attention out to actually truly understand you cannot be your best self. You cannot be your brilliant self without actually having other people around you, people that see more in you than you see in yourself, people that fuel possibility, people that want to see you succeed. And I talked a lot about this in my second book, It's Who You Know. And in this book, I really want to teach the reader about the critical people that you need in your world to help you feel supported, but to also help expand your possibility, because too many of us surround ourselves with the wrong people. So this is all about driving innovation and ideation and personal performance. And then law number 4 is when I talk about magnifying your influence. And this law is all about raising your profile. It's about being seen. It's about being heard. It's about influencing more as an individual, but also then accelerating and amplifying the performance of the people around you. Now, none of these laws can, it's not like you do law 1, law 2, law 3, law 4, done. You know, I say brilliance is a practice, it's a discipline, and it's an absolute choice. And it is a lifelong practice, like meditation, like learning to do yoga, that in those moments where you're feeling out of kilter, assessing yourself and going, okay, which of these 4 laws do I need to focus on right now? So at the moment, with a lot of the work I'm doing in organizations and with individuals and business owners, the reality is that law number 2 is the struggle. the managing their energy, the ability to lead themselves functionally so that they can actually fuel the energy of their teams, their organizations, and people around them. There's too many people that are absolutely exhausted right now. And so that has become the focus for many of my clients. But it will change over time.
Yeah.
And this is the whole point of this book. It's intended to be a handbook to help people push past whatever rut they're feeling.
And that's one of the things that I really loved about the book, that it is that kind of handbook. It is kind of a playbook with that. But those 4 laws, which I get and I understand, and you explain them so well in the book, and you explain them so well here. But they are all predicated on the challenge that you put in the book is that, are you actually hungry for success? You might want it, but are you hungry, and are you prepared to pay the price? Because there is a price for it.
Yeah. Well, it's also hungry for success or hungry for change. Because I think that they're the same depending on the individual. So success means different things to so many people. For some people, it's about building a multi-billion-dollar organization. For some, it's about becoming the best accountant or lawyer they can be. For some, it's about having an influence in their community. For some, it's about, raising a wonderfully balanced family. For some, it's about being the best parent I can be. And essentially, irrespective of what success is to you, the same premise of people are not living that version of themselves exists, whether you be in corporate, whether you be in your own business, whether you be somebody looking after a family. And I go, what is the cost of not being your best self? Because the cost of not becoming what it is that you want to be is frustration, is coulda, shoulda, woulda, is looking back on your life and having moments of annoyance that you missed out on those things, or frustration at how you behaved. And I think the cost far outweighs any intentional commitment to choosing to try and be your best self every day. So for me, as I touched on earlier, I'm on a mission, and my mission is to unleash brilliance in 10 million people over the next 10 years. And the reason that's my mission is because over my corporate career and over building my own business, I have seen the impact that you can have on somebody else when you step into your spotlight. When you step into your spotlight, not worrying about your imperfections or beating yourself up about what you don't have or blaming other people for your lack of progress, when you take full ownership for who you're being as a parent, as a member of the community, as a team member, as a leader, as a CEO of an organization, as a politician, when you take full ownership of the impact of your behavior on other people, the ripple effect is phenomenal. And I'm going, I want brilliant people to be out there creating that impact on others. And my big picture vision here is I want to be able to unlock brilliance in those boys and girls out there that have dreams that need someone else to help them shine. And so for me, everything I do is about talking to this. It's about inspiring people to take ownership for every single choice, for every single action, for every single impact they are making on the people around them. It's absolutely about leading yourself with courage, having the courage to step forward every day, having the courage to accept responsibility for the stuff that's not working and taking pride in the stuff that is working. It's about having the bravery and the ownership of yourself that you can actually accept other people, that you can look past your own judgments. There's a wonderful story in the book where I talk about having to have your own judgments reset. That takes a hell of a lot of bravery, because we all have an unconscious bias of behaviors and values that is driving our behavior. And we have to get past that. And ultimately, it's about being brilliant by leading always from this place of love and teaching everyone around you. And that is my mission, because
I also love the fact, Janine, that you talk about, and you do it very eloquently in the book, where you talk about, standing out. And you quote the Dr. Seuss, why should I can't remember exactly what it is, but why should I fit in when I was born to stand out, or something like that. But I think that's just really important, is not to try to fit in. it is to actually understand yourself. I mean, and how do you help people then to stand out in that way?
Well, how I help them is we start at the very beginning, to be honest. You know, I run some pretty long-term programs in organizations, and I love seeing individuals come into these programs at the beginning. These are leaders in companies, people that are responsible for big budgets and big decisions, and yet they're rattled with self-doubt. They're wondering what's next, and they're frustrated that they're not being seen. And over the course of this program, getting them to actually start taking ownership for who they are and their impact. And we see this incredible shift. So I always start with the first law number one, owning your spotlight. And it literally is, what are you known for? What is your area of expertise? What lights your fire in your belly? And I do mention in the book, my slide, as much as I have ultimate respect for Simon Sinek's work, It Starts With Why, I actually think that has fueled incredible amounts of anxiety. You know, individuals are racked with, I don't know my why, I don't know my purpose, oh my gosh, I need help. And the coaching industry have made a fortune out of it. Organizations trying to find their purpose and their why are spending a fortune on it. And I go, you know what? There's a question before that. And that question is, who are you? Who are you? And owning your story and owning the good stuff and the bad stuff and the awesome stuff. Because if you track back, you can absolutely identify all the things that have made you you. And it's this ownership piece. Instead of hiding, instead of staying invisible, instead of smoothing off the facets of yourself, I call them, embrace your jiggly bits. Your jiggly bits are great. You know, that's the stuff that we remember. And then teaching people to actually speak up, to stand up, to share their expertise is really the challenge. A little story in terms of my learning on this. I'm sure, I don't know if you follow surfing, but in Australia, there's a 7 times world champion surfer, a lady called Layne Beachley, who's actually a really, really good friend of mine. She lives here in Manly. And, you know, Layne wanted to be a world champion at the age of 4. She talks about as a 4-year-old girl, and she's my age now, so she's, you know, 49, 50. And at the age of 4, she told her parents she was going to be a world champion surfer. And she tells the story about this absolute commitment. And again, at school, it was knocked out of her to try and follow the academic. Anyway, she made it. But the point of this story is I remember her approaching me at one event, and she just came up and she said, "Thank you, Janine. So I just want to thank you because that work that you got me to do really unlocked X. And as a result of that, I'm now doing Y, Z. I just wanted to thank you. It was awesome." Now, at the time, Janine, typical north of England girl, got very humble and just went, yeah, don't worry about it. It's all fine. And tried to deflect from myself. And she got so angry with me, John. She literally went, "Stop it." And I went, "What?" She said, "What right do you have not to let me thank you for the impact you're having in my world? And what right do you have not to share your impact with other people?" And I just literally went, yeah, and I did. I went, oh, and I literally, it was like I'd got this virtual slap, because she said to me, she said, "Janine, every time you hide, it stops me wanting to thank you, and it stops other people seeing how you can help them become better." And it was this massive wake-up call for me to go, you know what? Again, the enemy is within. We worry about standing up. We worry about shining in our own spotlight. We worry about being cut down for talking about our successes, for talking about how we can help. And yet, the people around us need us to be some level of beacon, of hope, of possibility, so that they can also unlock their brilliance too.
So I think it's our responsibility to be brilliant, isn't it?
It is.
And that's really coming back to the book.
Yeah.
Janine, before we could go on, I'm sure this is good. We could do another one of these easily, and we will. But before we wrap up for today, 2 questions I ask everybody. A book other than your own, I know you've got a few under your belt, that has had an impact upon you. What book it is, which book it is, and what's the impact it had on you?
It's such a great question, and I'm sure you get answers all the time saying, "Oh, there's so many," and there are.
Yeah, there are.
I'm a book fiend. My husband, I literally picked up another 2 books today, and they pile up to be read, and I usually flick through them. But one book that has stayed with me forever, that I reference when I need a little bit of a kick, and it's a deep book, is The Prophet by Khalil
Oh, yeah.
Gibran. And there's something about that book that speaks to me. It spoke to me as a 20-year-old. I can tell you exactly where it is right now. It's my go-to in terms of just the messaging in that, again, around personal responsibility, that it's far bigger than us taking one step forward every day.
It's an amazing book. Actually, that book is up to my left as I'm speaking to you, and I would say I probably came across it for the first time around the same age as you, around 20. And I pick it up every now and again, and it is an extraordinary book. You get something different every single time you read it. So I would absolutely, it's a brilliant book, and gosh, it's lovely to be reminded of it again. Second question I ask is daily rituals, if you have any. What are they and what they do for you?
I'm obsessed with my daily rituals, because I know that for me to do
I knew that before I asked you.
And I've learned the hard way too, because you know, as you can imagine, for any of your listeners that are parents, and particularly, you know, mums that are working full-time with young kids, I let my daily rituals go, and I pretty much hit burnout. And every time I've let them go, I've realized I'm letting everyone else down, actually, by not looking after myself. So my daily rituals, my morning, my alarm goes off at 5:20 every morning, and I head to the gym. I do a crazy 45-minute workout. And then I come home and I meditate, if I can, for 20 minutes, but as a minimum 10. And that is how I set up my morning. If I've got time, I'll do some journaling, but exercise and meditation start off my day. The end, and mine is all about bookending. So the end of my day, the power of sleep. So it's taken me 3 years, John, to get the discipline of going to bed at a reasonable time happening, and now it's such a part of my world. So it's the getting to bed. I usually read a non-work book at bedtime, and I do my gratitude journal at night. So those are the 2 critical habits for me. It's literally how I start my day and how I wind down my day. If I don't start my day properly, it just doesn't feel right, it doesn't go right. And if I don't end it properly, I don't wake up in the morning in a better mood. So those 2 things are absolutely critical for me.
Well, I'm a fanatic about rituals, so I absolutely agree with you, because I know in my own world, you're right, the day doesn't feel right if you don't do it. It just does, and it goes away from you. So listen, thank you. I've taken up much more of your time than I said I would, so I appreciate you staying with me. But I want to really endorse the book that you wrote. It is a great read. I highly recommend it to everybody. But where can people get in touch with you, Janine?
They can find me at janinegarner.com.au is my website, or contact me on LinkedIn, Janine Garner. You'll find me there. And the book is available everywhere now. So it launched in the US at the beginning of August, and it's in the UK and Europe now. So Amazon, any retailer, you'll be able to find it.
Well, listen, I wish you success. I know you will have great success with it, because you really deserve it. It's well written. There's great content and really valuable to anybody. So thank you, Janine, for joining us today.
Thank you so much, John, for having me.